From in the beginning to the musical apocalypse, this is The Bible Says What? I'm your host, Mike Wiseman. The big picture. What is the big biblical picture? What is the end game for Yahweh? According to the Christian Holy Book, only a select few will get to spend eternity in the happiest place off earth. There will be death and destruction for the rest of us. Why is there death and destruction for so many? Well, because those individuals that either refused to or didn't know they had to worship and love the invisible man adored by Christians get to spend their eternity burning or not existing, depending on the believer you talk to. The big picture for most Christians is the love and sacrifice of Jesus. Unfortunately, the love of Jesus only applies to those that love him back. The rest of us, according to Jesus, deserve to burn for eternity. His sacrifice was his death. The death of an eternal being that died for maybe 3 days is not much of a sacrifice. There are countless others throughout history who have suffered for more and longer that don't get to come back to life. Even when you break it down to a selfless sacrifice, it falls apart drastically. A loving deity that requires bloodshed for forgiveness is a contradiction. This is the big picture of the Bible: death, blood, vengeance, and eternal punishment. Christians assume the Bible is a story of love and sacrifice without any thought of the big picture. Let's start the show.
Is there anything in the Bible that you yourself have an issue with? Okay, so it took you reading the Bible to realize that those things were bad for you?
Yeah, it actually did. I
Couldn't
didn't
figure this out on your own?
No, Ted Bundy could be redeemed. God doesn't kill children.
What do you think the Passover was? Yahweh sets up a whole system in the Old Testament where you slaughter animals just so he's able to forgive you.
Today's special guest is Paul Chung. He is an author, and he is also the series author of What Do You Mean God Speaks? Welcome to the show, Paul.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
I'd actually like to call you Sungo, if that's okay.
Oh, sure. You can try that.
Awesome.
My friends call me Sunny as well.
Oh, I like Sunny.
I didn't like it when I first, my junior high friends started calling me that because they couldn't pronounce Sungo, right? So
that would make sense. It makes it, that's Americans. We have a hard time pronouncing words,
Well, they're Canadians, right?
That's
right.
Canadians, yes.
So people have a choice. You can call me Paul. You can call me Sungo. You can call me Sunny.
I like both of those. Okay, so Sungo, tell us about your book. First off, a little bit about that. I didn't know you were an author. Tell us a little bit. What's it called? What's it about? So
the book is titled God at the Crossroads of Worldviews. It's a book on philosophy of religion. I am technically a scholar because I do teach at university on topics of, I guess you can say, philosophy of religion, but also science and Christianity in general. I'm only an adjunct, though it's more of a contract gig. So I sometimes teach at university. I sometimes speak at different conferences, sometimes speak at churches. And the book that I mentioned, God at the Crossroads of Worldviews, is an academic book. So if you want to read it, you can just move, like if there's a major university or academic library near you, you can probably find it. So instead of say ordering on Amazon, although royalty would come to me, so that would be nice. And that book is closely related to my main sort of interest, you could say, or main sort of question and struggle, which was something like this. See, I sort of get Christianity, but I only sort of get it. Just like how I sort of get atheism, or to be specific, because atheism is more like a feature of various different worldviews. So you have communism, which is atheist. You have scientific naturalism. So I sort of get scientific naturalism, at least in the way that, say, Stephen Hawking would view it, minus all the technical physics stuff. But I only sort of get it. But when I study different worldviews, I notice that when people talk about, philosophical and religious and like major worldview level stuff, they tend to talk past each other. So, and they don't notice because they speak from their perspective, and the other people speak from their perspective, and they argue and they say, well, you're an idiot, and the other person, you're an idiot. And you know how it goes sometimes when it goes like really toxic, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you're like, okay, I can see why people get annoyed, but there were times when I'm like, I don't think they're talking about the same thing, even though they use the same words. So I was going, why is that? And at the same time, because I remember I sort of get Christianity. So maybe there's also that gap between what Christianity says. I mean, like historically, and like why Christianity, not this one specific branch of it. And I said, maybe I should look into it and see where the gap is between my, say, modern contemporary sensibilities and what something like concept of God and all of those things were, and see if I can translate it, right? Because that's what's often needed. Translate the concept into a view that makes a bit more sense to me and more sense to people who sort of see the world the way that, way like I do. Yeah. And the first part of the project basically became, and this was part of my this sort of is based on my PhD dissertation. Then I expanded it into a book, and then University of Notre Dame sort of took it, and that's why it's there. So that's the book. It's basically about saying, when people try to debate about God, we need to establish which worldviews they're coming from. And instead of simply saying, well, God exists and no, God doesn't exist, it's actually more helpful to start by figuring out where the worldviews cross each other. And where the worldviews cross each other, and you see sort of like a conception of truth and reality, and, like big conceptual stuff, that's probably how you can begin to translate other people's beliefs. And if you do that, you might actually have a bit more fruitful sort of discussion than if you didn't.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So that's.
Well, let's do that right now. Let's establish where you stand with your God. Can you describe your God?
It might actually be better if I were to ask you first. So, because again, I've noticed that when people speak about God or debate about God, they actually have a underlying and sometimes even unconscious a conception, right? Even if you don't believe in the concept, right? You have this idea of what you think you are speaking out against, or you don't believe, and whatnot. So
like a definition.
So instead of simply taking an actual position or your view about whatever that belief is, start more simple. So what do you think, for example, what do you think the concept, at least the Christian concept of God, is supposed to be, right? Whether it's right or wrong, what do you think the concept is? What do you think they're talking about?
Well, it depends on the Christian you talk to. As far as I can see, and I've talked to a lot of Christians, it's it's your own personal Jesus, your own personal Yahweh. Every Christian believes something a little bit different about their God, how they help them, how they don't help them, how they help somebody else, how they feel about the country or somebody else's country or somebody else's religion. Every Christian has a different opinion. And that's what I've come to realize is it's mainly just about opinions. So what is your opinion and belief about your God? That's
actually, no, that's not quite the question, because yes, okay, people have different opinions about God. Yeah. But what's the general concept of God upon which you are putting the opinions? Like, what's God's creator deity? What do you mean by creator deity?
A God that created people and everything. That's what I see a lot of.
Okay, and what do you mean? Like, how would this creating thing work? Like, what's the imagery here? What's the
Typical biblical
okay,
stuff.
what's the imagery here? What's
Yeah,
the typical stuff?
Typical biblical stuff. Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, all that fun stuff. That's what I get.
Okay. Garden of Eden is less about the creation account. It's a secondary creation account. But okay, with the I'm going to assume the Genesis chapter 1 with light and all of
Instead
those things.
Of two.
Right. No, there's two
different,
accounts.
I love it. We're getting along already. Two
Right.
different accounts, 100%.
Look, okay. I know there are some Christians who say no. There's everything sort of fits, but we'll actually get into what that means later. But
okay,
I'm just trying to push you into being much more concrete, right? Because when I say God, it's like, well, people have different opinions about God. Okay,
right,
sure, but what's God? Like, and you say creator deity.
Yeah.
What does it mean? What does it mean for there to be a creator? Like, do you imagine like this invisible super Zeus type alien being that crafts world and engineers it? Like it's
I deny all of
like
them. Every concept you can think of, I deny it. I don't.
I don't. Yeah. Like, I'm not asking whether you deny them. Like, it's obvious that you deny them, but like, is that the sort of concept that you deny? And is that sort of like the general concept of God that you think Christians generally hold?
Like I said, there's different ones. Every Christian is different. Like
what are some of the
have the belief that there were two creation stories in Genesis. A lot of the Christians I talk to believe that that's not the case. So I mean, it just depends on the Christian you're talking to and the conversation we're about to have. So that's why I kind of want to know where you stand there, Paul.
But still, at the basis of it, right? You think there is some sort of, or they think that there's some sort of, to put it in a very simple way, like a super level Zeus, right? Super level,
superpowered,
like
human
superpower, human-like, or superpower entity. That's another word for it, right? That does stuff. Okay. Here's a bit of a puzzle for you.
I love puzzles.
Yeah. The classical concept of God. So I'm talking about like not the different like fundamentalist Christian groups. And they are Christian, I would say. How they're related is a different issue. You can check out my podcast series for that. But
check it out.
Yeah, talking about the classical theological definition that spans 1,000, 2,000 years with various Christian thinkers, right? God is not an entity.
What is God?
That becomes an interesting question.
Absolutely, and I want to know the answer. What do you think God is?
So here's a rough translation. Remember, I'm always translating the concept into different words, and what I am pointing out, based on what I have examined about different writings about God on by Christian thinkers, is that because here's a formulation, right? God is being itself and truth itself and goodness itself, and that's a really odd sort of way of putting it, because what does that even mean? So the way that I would translate it is God is reality, or God is reality at the most comprehensive level. If I'm trying to be a bit more specific, most comprehensive level and the most fundamental level. So reality, like so in sciences, for example, you study the universe, you try to figure out laws of nature and how the cosmos arises, and perhaps even multiple universes, which I don't think we have even figured out how to even confirm or disconfirm that, but whatever, right?
Same with God. We have no idea how to confirm or disconfirm that,
which is very interesting, but I'm going to actually get into it. God is reality in the sense that when scientists study laws of nature, and universe and all of those things, they are studying reality, principles really that define and describe and govern the physical universe part of reality. Yes, but they are studying reality. You're engaged with reality, right? I think in one of the episodes you said, I want reality, not imagination, which is great, right?
Yeah.
Of course, imagination is part of human reality. not the most, not the
true
no, because
part. I mean,
yeah,
yes
I mean, it
and
is
no, because I mean, we use our imagination to create different things, and it eventually goes into reality or whatnot. That's
right.
what science
So
is.
it can become reality. So when I'm talking about reality, I said the most comprehensive level too, right? So something like reality and all of the possibilities, like every possibility that can ever happen. So if you can imagine it, and if it comes out right, that's reality. Right, infinite, right?
But that's not reality. That's imagination and concepts. It's not actual reality, though.
Well, no, because if you imagine it, there's this delusional imagination that never come to fruition, right?
The election was stolen. There's a delusional reality.
Yeah, well, there you go, right? Okay, no political stuff.
I don't. I usually don't. I'm sorry. I just got off another show. It was just
look. I'm Canadian.
Oh, don't you Canadians love our politics out there?
No.
Good. Okay.
I think. I'm guessing most of your listeners are Americans, right?
As a Canadian, I got all over the place. Actually, I got a bunch in Kenya for Christ's sake. Yeah, so look, they're all over the place.
But for the American readers, I'm sorry. Stuff that you're doing just seems crazy to me. But okay, I mean, all right. That's not what we're talking about.
It is what it is. Thanks.
But sometimes you say you imagine things and people think you're crazy, but you actually bring it out. And what that means is that it was actually possible.
Right.
Yeah,
it was prove that along the way. And so how do we prove God?
No, because that's what I'm pointing out.
Okay.
Reality is a particular God is a particular way of understanding reality as a whole. So you don't prove God per se. You prove specific characteristic or aspect of reality that people think reality has, which Christians understand as God, right?
So how does that go from any other God, though? If we're just gonna,
what do you mean any other God?
How does that work to your God specifically?
Well, okay. Is a Christian God different from, say, the Hindu God
Kalima.
of Hindu what?
Kalima.
No, you're not Indiana Jones. I'm talking about actual philosophical conception of God in Hinduism.
Kalima's a god.
Right. But if you said Brahman, for example, I would say, yeah, okay, sure.
I also love that you went to Indiana Jones, by the way, though. I love that you went there.
Well, because I know where that word comes from, right?
But yeah, what about that? I mean, how do we get to your God specifically?
So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
is that God different God than the Christian God?
Is it?
Well, it depends, because see, there's how should I explain this? It is the same God in the sense that we are trying to talk about reality. We are pointing to the same thing, you could say.
I see what you're saying.
Not thing, right?
Yeah, well, we're filling that gap.
It's a different God in the sense that we have different understanding of what God is. And I say what at this point because we haven't actually entered the personal aspect of it yet.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Right. Okay. And right now you're trying to jump into the very specific Christian understanding and conception of God, right?
Absolutely.
That's what you're trying to push
me
into.
To the point. Let's go.
Right. And remember how you kept asking me hey, can you come to my podcast? And I was sort of not resistant. I kept saying no. Hesitant is the word for it. And the thing is, you're trying to ask way too many things in way too small amount of time. So
why? I mean, if we get to the bottom of it, I just want to know why. If we can't get to the why, and if it takes 3 years to get to the why, I don't understand. Can't we just shorten it? Can't you just tell me in a short, like a 5-second, hey, this is what I believe, this is why it's true? I mean, if you have the truth, all
right.
I could tell you the truth about certain things, and it's true. And I could tell you, like rabies is bad. It affects the system. There's all kinds of things we can go into, and I can tell you really fast and easily. I can even look up on Google Google
You
can
can-
explain things fast.
You
So, I
can
mean,
tell it to me really fast,
how?
but no, you can tell something really fast.
Uh-huh.
But if you are
Condense.
if you're stabbing at it from multiple different angles and you're digging through it and pointing out, well, that sounds dumb, or well, that doesn't make sense. Well,
Well,
an hour doesn't give enough time. Well, let's put it this way: is the general theory of relativity true?
man, I don't know. But I want to get back to this God thing, though. I want to get back to your
No,
God specifically. And I
no,
really want you to,
I'm trying to make a
describe your
point.
God for me.
I'm trying to make a point.
Okay, I don't know. Is it relativity? I don't know. Is it true? I don't know. It could be. It couldn't be.
You're bloody using a computer, which is based on the theory of relativity and quantum mechanics and all of that.
Right, it's true.
But if I were to ask you, like, is it true? Can you prove it? What about this? Or what about that? And you say, well, I can't explain it. Well, and if I were to say,
Google it.
well, can't you? Well, fine, sure, Google it and then prove it to someone who's totally resistant to that belief. But if I were to like criticize and all of that, you actually need time. Anything that's complex and worthwhile.
These are your beliefs, though. These are your beliefs. And if you,
yes, I also believe that theory of relativity is true.
Cool.
Can I prove it within 1 hour?
Yes.
God is more complex than the theory of relativity. That's what I'm trying to get to. So what I can tell you within this space, how much time? Within this amount of time is, as far as I can tell from what Christian thinkers have been saying, is that
I don't care.
Reality,
I don't care what Christian
God
thinkers
is reality.
think. I want to know what you think. And that's why we're
That's
here.
what I also think.
Okay, there it is. Thank you. So God is
reality.
God is everywhere around us in the He is the universe, kind of like that eternity character.
Not the universe.
Marvel.
Not the universe. Right?
Okay.
Because universe can arise and also disappear. If there are multiverse, for example, if there are multiple universes, which might be possible according to cosmologists, then there's something that makes different universes emerge and disappear. And that's the level of reality that we're talking about. And well, at the most general level, that's God. Now,
God
then
is
the question is, no, that God is whatever that brings. Okay, let's stick with the context of only the sciences. All right, natural science.
I just really want to know what you think God is. Like, can you
I am just explaining to you the definition of God within only the context of natural sciences. Because look, you're trying to have someone describe a very, very large idea, and I'm trying to give it to you sort of
I just want you to describe
manageable pieces.
The guy you think exists.
Which is what I'm doing step by step. If I don't do it step by step, then you're going to imagine that I gave you this shoddy idea and then say, "Well,
no,
look, it's full of holes." Look, I listened to some of your episodes, man.
Never.
So, within the context of natural science, the closest concept within natural science that I found translates to the concept of God is something like laws of nature, ultimate laws of nature.
So you're just taking something we don't know what it is, and you're giving Mother Nature the name of God. That's what
not
you're doing.
Mother Nature, laws of nature, because laws of nature is not physical. It's not anywhere per se, but it's also everywhere. It's not physical.
You're blowing my mind here. So the laws of nature aren't physical.
Not the laws themselves.
What are
we
they?
Actually don't know. What? It's what we have discovered and state to describe how the universe,
how the physical universe
arises
works.
and functions. Yes, how the physical universe works. But we can laws themselves is a statement. They're principles.
But it's part of the physical world, is it not?
It's not a part of the physical
spiritual
world. Do we even know what the word spiritual means, by the way? Well, I'm still trying to figure that out, by the way.
It's not. Well, that'd be great. We can touch that topic. I really wish you just give me that one.
But
that'd be a good definition right off the top.
Like, it's not physical in the sense that it's like, does it have mass? Does it does it exist in any local space?
Physical. It affects the physical world, right? Does it affect the physical world?
Well, it affects the physical world, but we are not talking about the physical world that it affects. We are talking about laws themselves.
Right. So nature affects the physical world, and you've given this.
What are you talking about?
effect
Nature.
of
We're
the
talking about laws of nature. Nature is a way of talking about
laws, whatever you want to
every
call it,
physical
man.
thing.
Whatever you want to call it.
right?
The laws of nature affect the physical world, correct?
And shape and govern, or
Right. So you're taking
like
laws of
different-
nature, and you're erasing the word laws of nature, and you're putting God.
I'm not. I'm
God
simply
is the laws
translating
of
it
nature. You're taking that and
within
making
the
it
context
God.
of science. Within the context of science, and
You can't
this
use
is
it in the
what
context of science, because science doesn't use God.
as I said, I am trying to translate the concept, and the reason why I translated the concept
It's a
that
gap.
way is
You're
this:
just fill in the gaps there at that point. How is that not
it's not
filling
a
the
gap.
gaps?
Okay, look, it's not a gap because
It's a
I'm
gap in
trying
understanding, is it not?
Why is laws of nature a gap of understanding?
We don't know what causes the laws of nature, do we?
Do laws of nature need causes?
Do we?
We don't know. Like laws of nature are just
we
there.
don't know, and now you're inserting God.
I'm not
don't
inserting
know.
God.
Okay.
I'm not inserting God.
Okay.
I'm equating.
Who are you
it.
inserting? Okay.
In fact,
that's
Stephen Hawking basically said, "Well, laws of no. Stephen Hawking's an atheist. That's why I'm making this point."
Said. Just make sure.
What?
You said basically said. I don't know about that. Just slow down with the whole basically said.
No, he's an atheist.
Or didn't say.
In grand design, he said, and because I have to paraphrase it, but
Go ahead.
Basically he said, well, laws of nature, God is I think he said physical. No, God is like manifestation of laws of nature. But you need more than that for the concept of God, which is right. But then he added like you need miracles, which like it depends on what you mean by miracles. But what he's trying to get at is laws of nature and the property that they have as a concept, by the way, because it's not a physical thing that you can point to, and conceptual property. Yeah, but look, affecting the physical world is not, it doesn't say anything about what that thing is. Well, we don't even know, we can't even say whether it's a thing, right?
That's just what we call it.
So the property that it has is the same sort of properties that theologians use to give to God. And well, it governs everything in the universe.
Right. It fills the gap. Absolutely.
It's not a fill in the gap. I said,
do we know? It's a gap in knowledge.
In what ways do laws of nature fill gaps?
No. When you put God in there, you're filling the gap. That's what I'm saying.
No, I'm not putting God in as like, look, I'm going to insert God so that we can explain the laws of nature. I'm simply saying laws of nature is an equivalent concept to the concept of God. I'm analyzing concepts here.
Okay.
That's all I'm doing.
Okay.
And one of the reasons why I analyze a concept that way, it's not nature, it's laws of nature.
Do you believe that?
In the context of science, yes.
So, God isn't, there's no God in the context of science. But what you're doing is you're taking that gap in knowledge and you're putting God in there. That's what I'm seeing.
Remember what I said in the beginning. I said, God is a particular way of understanding reality as a whole. Science is a particular way of trying to understand particular aspect of reality. And the way that they have understood reality is to discover that there are principles and laws that govern or define or shape the universe, right? Or maybe multiple universes. Okay. And there are principles. They're linguistic. And the root of science points all the way to, well, in this case, because there are many different branches that go into it, but you could say trunk is the Greek conception of the logos. And the concept goes something like this. We can understand reality, you could say. We can understand reality in terms of rational principle, right? And we can describe reality with our language, which is why logos means discourse and language and rational principle. So just as we can describe reality with our language, the cosmos is defined by a language of sort. It's sort of like a speech, right? And that sort of developed later on when modern science was born out of philosophy, because that's what happened philosophically. That's when historically, I mean. That's why various scientific disciplines names actually use the word logos. So cosmology comes from cosmos and logos, biology, bio and logos and stuff like that, right? Now, in the Gospel of John, for example, and early Christian and Jewish thinkers looked at the concept of logos and said, well, reality is sort of like speech. That's another way to put it. Reality is sort of like speech. Yes, and that's a speech, and that's the speech of God. But the thing is, we are not adding another like entity, a super Zeus somewhere saying, yeah, Zeus was there and made the speech. It's simply that reality is like a speech. It behaves in some ways like a speech, and this speaking like feature of reality sometimes addresses us personally. So that's the part that I suppose people who don't believe in God could have problem with. Not could have, would have problem with. But not the general concept of reality is sort of like speech, and we understand reality, not just the universe, reality as whole, sort of like a language. Well, maybe I've gone too far already. Anyone talked about the idea of analogia entis with you?
What is that?
Analogia, way of analogy? No one yet. It's like
they might have. I might have forgotten. Go ahead.
Okay,
tell me
the
about
understanding is whenever you talk about God or reality at the most comprehensive level, and however you put it, you can only use analogies. So when you say God is wise, that's an analogy. Because when you say God is wise, God is not like wise in the way people are wise. And people, you could say, well, then what does that even mean? Well, yeah, it's something like it's something like a comparative, right? It's better to understand God, or if you want to switch the word, it's better to understand reality as something that holds wisdom rather than not. And you could say, well, wisdom, really? Well, we can substitute different words for it. Reality is like a speech because we can describe it. There are principles that underlie and define everything and maybe even govern everything. And our speech can describe it. So in that sense, reality is like a speech. And another sort of metaphor that you could use is reality is like a story, in the sense that whenever we try to describe what happens in reality and in all of history, it always comes out in the format of a story, right? It doesn't mean that reality is a story with a plot with main characters. We don't know, but it unfolds like a story, which is why every story that we come up with is something that we pull or we are inspired by stuff that happens. So reality is sort of like a story. Right. To say I believe in God is that reality is like a story and reality is like a speech, and that story and speech can address me. And here's the thing, right? If I were to use a metaphor of say story, right? Well, and you were to think, right.
All right, say so you have hold on. Right. I think we're getting off on a side note here. I really want to just dive into this. I really want to know. I'm just going to flat out. Why are you a Christian? What convinced you that all of this is real? What was it?
30 minutes? When I'm trying to reason out everything, and it took me 20 years. I just
want to know what was it that 30 minutes? Turned you into a Christian? What made you a Christian?
Because reality is like a speech and reality is like a story, and it
that makes no sense to me. I'm sorry. I'm just not picking up that concept. Is there a better way to explain it?
What part of
reality is like a story? It's great, but how does
reality unfolds somewhat like a story?
Point to your God, because it doesn't fit with me.
Well,
get it.
if it's a story, can we understand the story as a story being told by an author, but not an
Of
author
course.
that's
Well, okay.
not an author that's in some separate space or anything. I'm just saying does sometimes stories sort of connect? Well, not even that. I've noticed sometimes that when people talk about, say, religious experiences, right? I've met Jesus and Jesus talked to me, and he led me to do this or that. I think your objection mainly was something like, well, it's just
Was
your
he
thoughts.
actually there? Was he? Yeah, exactly.
Like-
it's just a feeling and a
like,
thought. There's no Jesus
Is
actually involved.
is it just a feeling or a thought? Like, was the Jesus right there? And my point would be, why would you expect some invisible man to be there? And why would you expect that that's what it means for someone to meet or hear Jesus?
I expect an actual physical appearance. I expect evidence. That's what I expect. A God that wants to have a relationship with me, I expect him to show up. 100%.
Okay.
Pretty simple.
So
it's pretty simple,
So if
request.
someone were to suddenly have this inspiring thought,
that means nothing.
they should no. I'm trying to give a specific example, because without a specific example, we don't know what that
Go ahead,
statement
son.
or case even is. So say there are a bunch of slaves. You feel terrible that they're a bunch of slaves, but you can't really do anything about it. And suddenly you have this inspiration, maybe even a vision. Maybe it's a physical little thing, but let's
just say a dream, right? Would that work?
Or dream, or a burning bush, right? A bush burns, but it doesn't burn.
That's
because it's a phosphorus thing.
Let's go with dream, because that's more real,
right? Or it could just be a weird natural phenomenon, right? Like a phosphorus light somewhere, and like, wow, that's weird. But wow, that's a very good symbol of
I like dream.
what
Let's
these slaves are going through. But okay, dream, whatever.
Yeah, I like it. Let's do it. Let's pick one and go. So
but in that example, it wasn't a dream, but whatever. So you have a dream, and it says, go and save these slaves, right?
Okay.
Right.
I had a dream.
So
something in my dream, somebody told me to go free some slaves. All right, go ahead.
In a dream. So is that God?
No. Why would it be God? Why would
not?
I automatically assume that?
Well, that's true. Why would I automatically assume that? Could
even
it be
if the
God?
guy, even if my dream said, "This is God, I'm telling you to go free some slaves." No, I'm sorry. It's called a dream. Come to me in my waking hour. Come to my bedside. Why don't you hold the wheel, Jesus? I mean, anything besides. I mean, come on.
And
man.
this is why this is why I think you're misunderstanding the concept of God at the most fundamental level. But
I love it.
Right.
I love it. Go ahead.
If it's so it might not be God. That's very true.
Yeah.
But
most likely it's not. I mean, there's countless
what do you mean?
possibilities.
So
it could
what
be
would
aliens transmitting into
what
my
would make that
brain.
dream God? What would make that dream be something from God?
Nothing would make that dream something from God.
And why not?
Because he's not showing up physically. A dream could be a million different things.
Why would God need to show up physically?
Because he wants to have a relationship with me. He doesn't want me to burn in hell. Why would he not show up physically? He did for so many others. Why not for everybody?
Why would there need to be a physical, invisible man? In fact, why would a physical, invisible man be God?
Because
even if he has like superpowers,
right? Because he can show himself.
No.
That would be
that would be a Superman.
Would it not?
No, that would be an invisible Superman. It might even be, as you said, a very powerful alien.
Okay, could he move a cup across the table? Could he stop this pen from falling? Could he stop gravity? Are you ready? Is Jesus real? God there. God, if you're there, stop this pen.
But that's not what we're talking about.
God, if you're there.
Look, that's not what we're talking about.
He just can't catch pens. He can't interact in the real world, though. That's my problem.
That's not what we're talking about.
He needs to be able to interact in the real world in a way, in a manner that is convincing.
Why? And why would that be different from, say, a super powerful alien?
Exactly. We don't know who it is. We don't know where it is. Sending me dreams isn't going to prove anything.
So by definition, you're not really searching for God. You're searching for a super powerful alien.
I'm searching for the God that you believe in. Is he real? Can he stop this pen? Can he?
Why
Sonny,
would he
can
need to stop the pen?
What? He made the
Can
fleece
reality
wet for
stop
Gideon.
that? Can reality stop
Can
that
he?
pen?
Can your God, the all-powerful God, stop this pen?
No. That's your imagination of God.
What is your God? I don't know what your God is. You won't
I said
describe
God
him.
is reality.
That is nonsense. How does that work?
God is a particular way of understanding reality as whole.
reality?
So let's go back to the.
Okay, stop. Can your God
Let's
affect
go
reality?
back to the issue of the dream, because
Can he
apparently
affect reality?
reality is God.
Can he affect the reality and stop this pen? Is that something within his powers?
Well,
Yes.
why would he?
Why would he? To
would he?
show that he's real. That would be a good idea, right? If he wants
Look,
everybody to know he exists. Does he want everybody to know he exists? Does he want everybody to love and worship him?
The way that I define God,
You're not answering my questions. It's kind of frustrating.
I am answering your question. The way that I'm defining God is that if you drop the pen and pen drops by the power of gravity, that's also God.
Can he affect reality? Can he do things like, I don't know, bring somebody back from the dead?
That did happen.
Good. Then he can stop this pen from falling to the ground to save millions of souls. Are you ready?
Why?
Can he do it?
No, he wouldn't.
To save
I can bet you he wouldn't. Drop the pen will drop, and I'll say power of gravity.
Right, because gravity works, and God isn't real.
Look, that's your conception of God.
Is he there?
I keep saying,
watch him. Watch
Look.
him not be real. And
look, you're not even engaging with.
I'm engaging with
what I said about God.
He's reality. He can affect
reality. If you have a problem with your imagination of God, that's great.
You just told me he can affect reality.
I didn't say he can affect reality. I said he
brings
is
people
reality.
back from the dead,
so in
right?
that sense,
he brings people back from the dead, right?
What that means is that
reality.
What that means is that reality can unfold sometimes in such a way that man can arise from the dead.
Still not working, man. It's still not working. He can raise people from the dead, but he can't stop a pen from falling to the ground to save souls.
Okay, here's what you're doing.
I'm testing God is what I'm doing.
You just came up with your own imagination of God, and you're pushing your imagination and your belief about God. You said
he can affect reality. This is your idea. This is your concept, man. You said he can affect reality.
No, you put words into my mouth. I said God is reality.
But
we're still getting to explain what that actually means, and you keep wanting to jump into this idea and like, look, I want your idea to exactly follow mine. It's like, okay, look,
I want your idea to be reality. If your idea is reality and he can affect reality by raising people from the dead, from making ground wet and fleeces not for Gideon, if he can show up.
Okay, so that's what I'm talking about with the dream.
Show up for Paul in the Bible.
Let's go back with the
why
dream.
Can't he stop a pen? Dreams are worthless as proof of anything. That's our subconscious mind. That has no proof of God. The real proof of God is if he showed up in reality.
That's because you stopped at the story with the dream. And you're right. If someone has a dream and say, wow, that's a cool dream, I think it's from God, and stop there, then okay.
Yeah.
Then that doesn't say anything. But if the person then got up and went to the ruler of a country and said, well, I had a dream, and apparently God came to me in a dream, and he wants
Joseph.
He wants people.
You're
talking about Joseph? Not Joseph in this case. Moses.
Okay. Oh,
and Moses wasn't a dream, right?
Joseph was an interpreter of dreams, wasn't he?
What? Joseph interpreted dreams. Yes.
Yeah. That's where I'm going with that. Go ahead. Sorry.
We could have used example with the Joseph as well, but whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, let my people go, and Pharaoh says no, and that sounds stupid. And
have you read that?
And
story,
he has a dream. Right?
Oh, that's such a horrible story. Yahweh caused Pharaoh's heart to be hardened. He didn't really want his people to go. They just wanted to worship him. He just wanted them to worship him. And then he wouldn't even
now
let
you're
it
going
happen
off tangents.
because he said he set this whole thing in motion. He caused Pharaoh to do this because he wanted to show off his powers. That's what it says.
Okay, that's an entirely different set of topic and questions.
It's a riptide. I apologize.
Which I could actually address, but that would take another 30 minutes.
Next time. Sorry, Riptides. I take them. Go ahead.
But and this is why I didn't want to give the name Moses, because then we go off on a tangent and you bring up the issue of the Pharaoh and all of that, right? So
next episode we'll go round 2. Go ahead.
So he had a dream. He goes to the Pharaoh and he thinks it's impossible. People laugh him off. But stuff happens, right? Stuff happens and people are freed. So if that's the case,
kids died. But go ahead.
I wasn't talking about Moses. This is why I wasn't using the name,
go ahead.
right?
I know. I'm sorry. I can't stop myself. Go ahead.
Right. Let's say in this story, the ruler almost got into this terrible accident, but he survived. And he has a, I don't know. He has a.
This is a story, though. This isn't reality. We're basically.
No, I'm giving you an example.
Biblical stories. Like, give me something that's happened currently. Do you have anything that's happened to you?
Okay. Here's one example.
Yeah, go.
But you could use the exact same objection if you don't follow why that story would point or would lead to at least reason for believing in God, right? Because your problem is that if it's a dream, then it doesn't matter. It's not God, because it's not. There's no physical, invisible man doing stuff there.
Well, how do you know it's not an alien sending you a dream? That's the problem. You don't know which God, you don't know which being. It could be your grandmother from heaven sending you a dream. You don't know. And to fill that gap of unknowing, to fill that gap of I don't know with God or your reality, it doesn't fit, man. See.
Oh man.
I love it. You're smacking the table. I'm sorry I'm getting you so upset, but I love this. This is so much fun. Did you hear any of that? Go ahead.
You think I'm filling in the gap?
I think we need to sit down and have a beer together, face to face. Right. I think we would have a blast.
You think I'm filling in the gap because you're imagining that I have this completed conception of God that you, I don't know.
No. I think you're filling in the gaps of the I don't know with nature, laws of nature. We don't know what causes the laws of nature, so you're filling in with God. That's my feeling. That's what I'm saying.
I'm not even saying there's a cause to the laws of nature. I mean, maybe there is. Maybe there is. And if that's the case, that'll be God. What I'm saying is,
see,
what I'm calling God is the reality that I'm engaged with.
Right.
That's what I'm calling God. Except then what needs to happen is that I need to then fill in the content of my understanding or my concept of reality. And you could say that's partly what the Bible does. That's partly what, say, for example, philosophy does. That's partly what I suppose science does. But what then happens is that when you fill in all the gap, and I haven't, which is why I exactly said I sort of get Christianity, right? If I fill in all of that with content, then what will emerge, if Christianity is right, is the Christian concept of God, which is, and so reality. You could think of reality as like this blank concept, but everyone believes in reality, right? And you can think of
any creator God. Why does it have to be the Christian God? Well, how do you get that? How do you get from all of that to Christian God?
Why would you think that the creator? It's not even a creator deity, because creator deity is a very
whatever you want to call
it. Because the idea develops in various different cultures into a much more complex conception of God. Say,
is it the Bible that convinced you that's what God is?
Partly, right?
Yeah. What's the other part?
How much time? Because I do need to talk about the latter part of the answer. But in that, you think like, look, there's reality and there's laws of nature, and I just want to stick God somewhere. Whereas what I'm doing is no. All of that goes into the concept of God,
right?
Concept of what could be.
That's what
I'm not
saying.
Sticking God in there any more than I stick the concept of reality. I mean, look, equating one concept with another is a different thing than sticking another entity in a list of entities. That's a very different sort of activity. And if you don't get that, then
you've picked one reality, and then that happens to be your specific God. That's what you've picked.
We are leading to that, because for me to be able to justify that this conception of reality will turn out to be the Christian God, we just don't have, like, we haven't actually discussed all the routes. Look, my podcast series is something like 30 hours long, and it's in the beginning chapters of Genesis. Because I'm trying to figure out piece by piece what each of those things mean and how that goes into it. And then you say, well, why can't you explain it to me in an hour? Well, if I can list
you've
the
studied
idea.
all that. You've studied all that. You can give me the short version, can you not? I mean,
if I give you this and the short version that I gave you, like, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
But
it doesn't
look,
make
okay.
sense. Can tell me why that works.
Here's one content that I would put in. Right.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
But I don't know whether you have a conceptual framework to even see that as relevant. But okay. It's
man, I love it.
Okay. I apologize. I'm not even trying to insult you. I'm just it's an observation, all right? It's an observation.
Keep going.
Okay, so there's this person. So there's my father. This happened while I was an agnostic. You could even say, like, intellectually speaking, my approach is even now agnostic. So
good. That's great.
It isn't that different there, but and one reason why I switched from, like, pure agnostic to, like, intellectually Christian is the stuff that I said already. Right.
Those are two words.
Yeah. Well, I could say words about that too, but whatever. So
it's another riptide.
Another thing that happened was that my father was he had a business, right? And he suddenly had this feeling, and he was praying, and then he had the sense. He had a thought, and he's like, well, it's just, you're a thought. How do you know it's not your thought and some other thing? But whatever, he had a thought, you could say, a very powerful thought that. You know how, like, it's thought sort of strikes you, right? And it's like, and it came in a form of a conversation, which was something like, I want you to go into ministry. And he said, that sounds crazy, because, I have a business. Why should I go into ministry? He came back home, and 3 different people called on the same day. And I checked, because I'm like, really? And they didn't know that he had this prayer, or let alone heard this. But they said, oh, we were praying, and we were struck with thoughts that God is calling you to ministry. And these were 3 different people, and they didn't talk to each other, which I checked. So he's like, that's weird, but I'm not gonna, because, like, why would you go into ministry? It's hard, and I have work, and I need to earn money and stuff. And besides, I need to go into seminary, and I'm a first generation immigrant, and like, you need English for much better English skills for graduate level study. And you need money, right? You need money to go to school. So he sort of put it off. About a week later, this lady comes, and she says, you're going to think that I sound crazy, but about a week ago, I was praying, and I had this strong, God said, you could say, but you could say feeling, whatever.
Feeling, there it is.
Right? Yeah. Feeling. That God wants you to go into ministry, and I'm supposed to support you. I will support you through the seminary. I'll give you the tuition for the seminary. But I thought that sounded crazy. God told me about a week ago, so I sort of put it off for a week. Is it true? And that was a point where my father was a bit too scared not to follow through with this sudden thought that came to him, right? So that's why he went to the seminary, and long story short, it actually turned out to it led him to a very interesting ministry, but that's that. So
well, okay,
it's a thought, right?
Yeah.
It's a thought,
yeah,
but it's a thought that leads somewhere, and it brings something true.
What was true?
That there are that he was supposed to go into seminary. It did bring something. It did bring out something fruitful, and there were other people that confirmed that, even though I don't want to say this is like the absolute condition, but the tuition paying thing, that was crazy.
You just went off
No,
on the
because-
deep end there. What tuition paying thing?
No, he said, I'm not going. I'm not going. Like I'm going to
Yeah.
disregard the thought
Yeah.
because it cost a lot of money to go to school.
Oh, yeah,
right,
yeah.
to train, right? So he put it off for a week, and this lady came a week later, and she said, a week ago, and she didn't talk to people. A week ago, I was praying, and I had this strong sort of push that God wants you to go into ministry and
Interesting.
pay for your tuition. So,
Interesting.
but at the same time, he's like, yeah, but they just had a thought, and
Right.
it just converged into a very strange sort of set of coincidences, right?
Yeah.
You could
Let me-
say it that way, right?
Yeah.
But
Uh-huh.
and here's why I said you might not have the conceptual framework to actually say what this is or why this would actually count.
Uh-huh.
Yes, let's use a metaphor of say an author to a story, which is why I said reality.
Well, now we're getting off a little bit. there.
Right?
We're
No,
getting-
it's I'm. This is right on point. I assure you.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Right?
We'll close it out with that. Go ahead.
Yeah. I said reality unfolds like a story. You don't have to say it is like a human story, but it does unfold like a story. And perhaps an idea we can say, if we believe in God, is that perhaps reality is like this infinite set of story, and there's sort of it behaves as if there's an author that speaks out the story. It behaves because God is not an entity according to classical Christian theology. So reality behaves like a story as an author, and God is like that author. But the thing is, an author can act upon a story in terms of just simply what happens in the story. So you drop a pen, right, in your story, and the pen drops, and you can say, God didn't do anything. But if reality is like a story, and in the story pen drops, and that's author speaking, then that's also God. Or in the case that I told you about my father and people praying, and they suddenly have these thoughts. Well,
I have a very similar story.
Right. Well, doesn't the author sort of write how people sort of have this thought, and then they go and do things? And so the only sort of standard that we can say God led me or not, it isn't like an invisible physical man, because invisible physical man isn't God. Only sort of standard that, if God is reality, only standard that we can use is, if you follow through with the thought that you have, what happens? Does it lead somewhere that's, I don't know, true, for the lack of better words?
Right.
And that's
It
the only
does-
standard.
Right. So
And
let
if
me
it
tell you-
doesn't,
go ahead. Uh-huh.
and if it doesn't happen, then okay, God didn't speak to you. Or maybe you should wait and do something else. I mean, it becomes more complicated than that. But if I were to put it very simply,
It's got to
if-
be more complicated than that, because let me tell you a little story. When I was
Okay.
younger, I was told I was
Mhm.
going to be a youth group pastor. I was going to lead
Mm.
millions to salvation. That was what I was told by pastors, youth
Right.
pastors, parents, relatives, everybody in the church. Oh, I have a word from God, and God says you're going to lead millions. There's an old lady. That's how she spoke.
Hmm.
You're going to lead millions to Jesus. As it turns out, Jesus never showed up for me, never proved his existence, never talked to me, never showed up on my birthday party, never had a
Well,
Paul to Saul
right.
moment. If he really wanted me to teach his truth, he should probably just come down and give me his truth, because I
Okay.
found the opposite. He doesn't exist.
Partly.
He doesn't move things across the table. He won't drop my pen or stop my pen from dropping. He won't. He won't give me that Saul to Paul moment. I must not be important enough. I must
Okay,
be
maybe you're
destined
not.
for hell.
Okay, maybe you're not, or maybe they got it wrong. But
They got it wrong,
maybe they got it
or
wrong.
maybe God isn't real, or people aren't really receiving these messages, and it's just kind of some subconscious shenanigans. Hey, that guy
Well-
sounds like a good leader. He can talk. Maybe he should be a pastor.
Yeah, so that could be
Right.
what happened.
That's more
But-
likely than a God speaking to them, and not to all the people that spoke to me.
What
That's
about
more
the times
likely,
that
right?
it comes true?
So you're counting the hits, but not the misses. You're completely
see.
ignoring all the misses.
No. Okay, so that's an interesting topic. Do we even have time for that? It's 10:30, but that's an interesting topic, because that's something that I'm trying to think through, because
Yeah.
I mean, you can imagine trying to test out whether what God says is real by having, I don't know, a massive sample of people. How familiar are you with the scientific process on something like a massive sample of people with double-blind tests, right?
Yeah,
So here's a control group.
The prayer thing.
Here's a control group, prayer group, right? That would be interesting, but then you have all of these barriers because
why can't God just show up?
Here's the main problem.
What would be easier though?
Here's the main problem. What sort of relationship or what sort of people relating to reality in what sort of way would have reality respond back, or in the sense of God appearing? Because you say, well, why shouldn't God appear? Well,
yeah,
I don't know. Are we assuming that that's his purpose? Or
does he want to have a relationship with it?
Yeah,
that's a whole other
relationship. But the thing is, you are related to reality at least. You wrestle with truth.
My concept of reality. We don't even know what reality is 100%.
Yes, so it could be God as Christians imagine it. It could be something else, right?
See, that's taking an I don't know and putting
filler.
God in there.
It's not filler because we are okay. In my podcast, I often say I explore this topic because what I'm doing
podcast.
is
we're done here.
What do you mean God speaks, right?
Yes,
because we are exploring things and putting the pieces into this larger canvas, you could say. And we are hoping that once all the pieces are there, Christians are hoping that it's going to look like Jesus. I suppose Hindus are saying it's going to look like Brahma, but we are still doing the same thing, I would say, right? And you're thinking it's going to look like a jumble. Maybe it's going to look like a jumble, but I am still putting the pieces.
It's going to be a big web, and we're all going to be worshiping Spider-Man by the end of it. Guarantee you.
Good grief, you're a Marvel fan. You could at least have said one above all. See, that's also a very close concept to God. Man, so at least you could have said one above all.
You're awesome. You can come back anytime. We're gonna continue this for sure, 100%. Thank you so much for hanging in there. Thanks for your time and your answers and everything. Be safe out there. We'll stay in contact. That's the end of today. Talk to you later, man.
Talk to you later.
It's out. Thank you, dude. You're awesome. No, honestly, I'd love to just sit across from you and have a beer. I appreciate your patience and your answers and your I love it. No, it was awesome. It was so much fun.
Well, I dread what the kind of introduction you're going to put, because I listened to some of your episodes and you're like, people like, blah, blah, blah. And then
I love
and
it.
then
what
you
kind of
shout over them.
What kind of introduction do you want? I will tailor it to your needs. What do you want?
I don't know. Was the discussion actually something where you're like, oh, he does say something new and possibly something that might be helpful or insightful, or was it all bullshit, for example? I'm hoping that it wasn't all bullshit.
No,
right?
It wasn't. And I love that you tried. That's the thing too. As long as you tried, I get a lot of guests that don't try and they just kind of give up and they laugh off my questions. It's kind of frustrating, and you didn't. And I appreciate that you attacked them, you went forward with them, and you tried to reason out with it. I love that. That's what makes a good guest to me, as opposed to the person that just rage quits.
I guess the fundamental sort of difference between and this was a thing that I was pointing out when you were asking me to guest on your podcast was, I don't believe that any, I don't want to say hostile, but critical. Any critical discussion of very, very large concept can happen within an hour when we're going to discuss the entire concept, which is why I wanted to limit the topic in a very, very specific way. Because if not, then
get there.
No, because you kept going off on a tangent. It's like, oh, look, like I'm gonna drop the pen. It's like, good grief, it's not. We're not talking about the same thing then, and
we got to go back to that. We got to go back. There's
the other issue, right?
I really did want to talk about that for sure. Can we do that in number 2? Can we do a number 2 when we talk about that?
It depends on the introduction that I hear from your episode.
I love it. I was thinking critical discussions, and it's important to have these discussions, and why it's important to have these discussions. That's what I was thinking.
So if I listen to the episode, I'm like, people who listen to it would actually go, oh, maybe maybe he's worth, because I don't know, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm only saying my thoughts. But if it feels like you thought, and the people that were listening also thought that, hey, this guy might be worth listening a bit more,
gotcha.
right?
I gotcha.
And if I hear that in the intro, then I'm like, okay, then perhaps at some point we can try to further the discussion, right?
I appreciate it, man. No, I'll definitely
Right.
give you a good one. Work on it tonight, and I'll let you know when it comes out. I'll let you know.
Right.
Actually, you know what? I can send you a transcript of the intro too. Just see how you feel about it.
Sure. Yeah.
Love it, man.
And I try not. Okay, perhaps I didn't try harder, but see, my approach is philosophical, right?
It is,
So
and
I follow it through
straightforward. So we're like on opposite ends, and I try to with the whole philosophy. I'm the ADHD man. It's just like with me, and I thank you for hanging in there and dealing
So
with it.
yeah, that's actually, I think, one of the challenges, because you have a certain way of wanting to put things, and I have a certain way of organizing thoughts.
You do.
I could say in a systematic manner. That's a good way. A bad way would be saying boring, like for some of your listeners. No, that's good.
Just
Okay.
very detailed, and
Right.
I feel that we can work together as far as that goes. I'm more bam, 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 and you're more detailed, and we can help learn off of each other and so forth from that.
I think we spend way too much time with you going, Pan's like, no, you're misunderstanding the concept. No, Pan, you're misunderstanding the concept. So,
well, we'll see where it goes, man. I'll let you know, and I'll work on that tonight. I appreciate it again. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Great evening.
Thank you for inviting me.
Talk to you later. And that's all the show there is for you today. Thanks for listening. If you like what you heard and want to help keep the recording light on, simply go to patreon.com/BSW the podcast and sign up to be a supporter of the show. Your episodic tithes of $1 or more will give you access to the patron feed, unaired conversations, early access to each episode, and much more. For the latest events, BSW swag, and a peek behind the scenes, head on over to the show's ever-evolving webpage at thebiblesayswhat.com. The Bible Says What the book is out. Head on over to thebiblesayswhat.com and get yourself and your grandma a signed copy. Thanks to the cosmic powers of the internet, it is now possible to buy me a beer or coffee online. Simply go to buymeacoffee.com/BSW the podcast and click the appropriate buttons. If you can't support the show monetarily, please like, share, and/or leave a review. As always, you can find me at the Bible Says What Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or Instagram pages. You can also reach me at bswthepodcast@gmail.com. And no matter which platform you use to listen to your podcasts, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss out on the next episode. Until then, would you kindly pick up your Bibles and read them? Children and Gidget. Oh God, here they come. Oh God. Oh, there's Harvey. All right. And I hear Vincent. There he is. All right. What do you guys have to say to the world?
It's not that. Comics are the best thing that's ever invented.
Comics?
And
Not
Pizza?
Too loud. Not too loud.
and chips.
Comics,
Papa.
pizza, and chips are the best thing ever invented. Who invented them?
And dogs.
And dogs. Dogs are the best. Great haircut, Gidget.
Gidget, say something to the world.
What do you want to say, Gidget? Bark, 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 bark. Okay, she says bark. Great job, everybody. Good. Oh, what do you want to say?
About school.
Okay, say something.
Is important.
Uh-huh.
Please learn.
Great. Great advice.
And we need to stop polluting.
Still need to stop polluting. Thanks, guys. Till next time. Bye.
Bye.